1 mile. That's the distance between a cryptocurrency mining facility and one of the most sensitive military installations in the United States. 1 mile between a data center majority owned by Chinese nationals and the home of America's Minuteman, the 3 intercontinental ballistic missiles, the same base now slated to be the first in the country to receive the LGM-35A Sentinel, the missile designed to replace the Minuteman III entirely. For roughly 2 years, nobody in the federal government knew it existed. CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, didn't know. The Pentagon didn't know. That's not the most surprising part, though. What's more surprising is how the government eventually found out. Not through a regulator, not through any routine security review, but through a tip. An anonymous tip to a committee most Americans couldn't name. Francis E. Warren Air Force Base sits just outside Cheyenne, Wyoming, and it's one of only 3 strategic missile bases in the country. The 20th Air Force runs its ICBM operations out of there under Air Force Global Strike Command, which makes it exactly the kind of place that, if you were drawing up a list of locations you'd want foreign-owned infrastructure to avoid, would sit near the very top of that list. In June 2022, a company called MineOne acquired 12 acres of land approximately 1 mile from the base perimeter. The purchase moved through a layered corporate structure. MineOne Partners Limited, registered in the British Virgin Islands and majority owned by Chinese nationals, sat above MineOne Cloud Computing Investment ILP, also a British Virgin Islands entity, which controlled MineOne Wyoming Data Center LLC, a Delaware company. That Delaware company held the deed. Delaware, worth noting, is the preferred domestic jurisdiction for corporate opacity. Its disclosure requirements are minimal enough that the state is home to more corporations than residents. Pull up the land records in Cheyenne, and you would see a Delaware LLC. The Chinese national ownership sat behind 2 offshore layers and 2 domestic shells, which meant the connection was not visible from the public record. That structure is entirely legal. Worth stating plainly, because it is the legal context that explains why no automatic alarm triggered. Here's the other piece. A 2018 law, the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act, signed on August 13, 2018, gave CFIUS authority to review real estate transactions near sensitive military sites, and that review is supposed to be triggered by a filing from the purchasing party. MineOne did not file. According to reporting citing CFIUS, the agency only learned about the site after an anonymous public tip landed on their desk, by which point the facility had been operating for the better part of 2 years. And it wasn't a small operation. BitOrigin, a Chinese company that had previously been in the pork processing business before pivoting to cryptocurrency, announced a partnership with MineOne and invested in the Cheyenne site with planned capacity of 75 megawatts and an initial investment of $3 million, figures drawn from BitOrigin SEC filings. Worth pausing on that for a moment. A facility drawing up to 75 megawatts, enough to power tens of thousands of homes, and enough to meaningfully stress the regional grid, was pulling that power from infrastructure the base itself depends on. A company that had been slaughtering and delivering pork in China became a limited partner in a cryptocurrency data center 1 mile from America's nuclear missile command. The facts really don't need any help. Microsoft also operates data centers nearby, including facilities supporting Pentagon cloud operations under contracts with the Department of Defense, and according to reporting from the New York Times, it was Microsoft that alerted CFIUS to the MineOne site, raising concerns about its proximity to both the base and Microsoft's own sensitive infrastructure. The presidential order that followed, signed by President Biden on May 13, 2024, described the site as containing specialized and foreign-sourced equipment potentially capable of facilitating surveillance and espionage activities, and it also cited concerns about MineOne's ability to destabilize the electrical grid serving the surrounding area, the same grid drawing from that 75 megawatt capacity that the base itself depends on. The White House described Warren as a strategic missile base and key element of America's nuclear triad. MineOne was ordered to halt operations, remove all equipment within 3 months, and sell the property within 120 days. Now, the question of what the facility was actually doing and whether it represented a genuine operational threat remains officially framed as a potential risk rather than a confirmed incident. National security analyst Faith, quoted by CBS News, argued that Chinese law compels any Chinese company to cooperate with state intelligence services regardless of how the corporate structure is arranged, which makes proximity itself the concern. That's a reported analytical position, not a legal finding, and it's worth keeping the distinction clear. What the documents do confirm is the ownership structure, the location, the failure to file with CFIUS, and the presidential response. 5 days before Biden signed the order, on May 8, 2024, CleanSpark, a publicly traded American Bitcoin mining company listed on NASDAQ, reached an agreement to purchase the Wyoming properties. CleanSpark's SEC 8K filing puts the purchase price at $18.75 million across 2 parcels covering approximately 17 acres, with a contingent payment of up to an additional $13.75 million. CFIUS approved the transaction, and CleanSpark officially closed the acquisition in September 2024. This was the first forced real property divestment in the history of CFIUS, an agency that has existed for decades and reviewed thousands of transactions had never previously compelled the sale of land, which meant the MineOne case established the precedent for every similar situation that comes after it. It is worth noting that this case did not emerge in isolation. A year earlier, in 2022, Fufeng Group, a Chinese agribusiness, purchased land near Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota to build a corn milling facility. The Defense Department flagged it as a national security concern, but CFIUS lacked jurisdiction at the time because Grand Forks was not on the covered installations list. That gap, the government identifying a threat it could not act on, was part of what accelerated the regulatory expansion that followed. The regulatory response did not stop there. In November 2024, the Treasury Department issued a final rule, effective December 9th, expanding CFIUS jurisdiction over real estate transactions near more than 60 military installations across 30 states, adding 59 installations to the list, and modifying the definition of what qualifies as a covered military site. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen stated the rule would significantly increase the ability of CFIUS to thoroughly review real estate transactions near bases. The broader picture of Chinese-owned land in the United States is a number that gets contested regularly. According to USDAAFIDA data cited by Foreign Policy in May 2024, Chinese investors hold approximately 349,442 acres of U.S. land in total, representing less than 1% of all foreign-owned land in the country. That figure may be potentially outdated, since the original USDA report year was not confirmed in secondary sources, and AFIDA data includes long-term leases and partial stakes alongside outright ownership, not just land held free and clear. Critics of that framing, including analysts quoted in the national security coverage of this case, argue the scale misses the point entirely. What matters, they say, is not how many acres, but which ones. That is the attributed debate, and the data presents the question without resolving it. What the records show clearly is a gap in the system. A foreign acquisition near a critical installation went unreported because the purchasing party did not file. The offshore structure made the ownership opaque from the public record, and the mechanism that eventually surfaced it was a stranger's tip. None of that required anyone to break a law. The structure worked exactly as designed, just not in a direction that served the oversight process. The November 2024 rule is designed to close that gap. Whether it does is a question the next set of filings will begin to answer, and this channel will cover it when they do.